honoris causa from the University of Bordeaux, France. During his illustrious academic career, Dr. Rao has held many positions in India and abroad. He was an elected fellow of Asia Pacific Academy of Materials, FAPAM 1997. He was an elected fellow of the World Innovation Foundation, UK 2002. He was an invited professor, University of Bordeaux, France, from Jan to June 2001 and between September 2005 and April 2006. He is an invited professor at the University of Paris at Marie Curie University, Paris, during June-July 2004. He is a visiting scholar at University of Cambridge during June to August 1981 and visiting scientist during March-April to 1992, to mention a few of his. Many awards and accolades have come in search of Dr. Rao. He received the Bhatnagar Prize of Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, India for Chemical Sciences in 1984. Distinguished Materials Scientist of the Year, Materials Research Society of India 2002. IISc's Gold Medal Lifetime Achievements Award, Indian Association of Solid State Chemists and Allied Scientists 2005. Sir M. Vishwesvaraya Award for the Lifetime Achievement in Chemical Sciences 2007, Karnataka Government, Karnataka State Council for Science and Technology, and many more. Now I request upon Dr. K.J.Rao to please address the students here.
ಇವಾಗ ಕೇಳಿಸುತ್ತಾರೆ. ಪ್ರಣತವಾನ್ ಪ್ರಾಣಿನಾಂ ಪ್ರಾಣಭೂತಂ ಪ್ರಣತಿಭಿಃ ಪ್ರಣಯೇ ಪೂರ್ಣಬೋಧಂ ಭವತಿ ಯದನುಭಾವಾತ್ ದೇಢಮೂಕೋಪಿ ವಾಂಗ್ಮಿ ಜಡಮತಿರಪಿ ಜಂತುರ್ಜಾಯತೆ ಪ್ರಾಜ್ಞಮೌಢಿಃ ಸಕಲವಚನಚೇತೋ ದೇವತಾ ಭಾರತೀ ಸಾ ಮಮ ವಚಸಿ ವಿಧತ್ತಾಂ ಸನ್ನಿಧಿಂ ಮಾನಸೇ ಚ. ನನ್ನನ್ನು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬಂದು ಮಾತಾಡಿ ಅಂತ ನಾನು ಮಾತಾಡೋಂತ ಕೇಳಿದಾಗ ಯಾವ ವಿಷಯದ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಒಂದು ಚರ್ಚೆ ಆಯಿತು. ಆಮೇಲೆ ನೀವೆಲ್ಲ ಎಂಜಿನಿಯರಿಂಗ್ ಸ್ಟೂಡೆಂಟ್ಸ್ ಅನ್ನೋದು ಕೇಳಿದ್ರು. ನೀವು ಕನ್ನಡದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾನು ಮಾತನಾಡೋದು ಇಷ್ಟವೇ ಅಥವಾ ಇಂಗ್ಲೀಷ್ನಲ್ಲಿ ಮಾತನಾಡೋದು ಇಷ್ಟವೇ ಅಥವಾ ಯಾವ ಭಾಷೆ ಅನುಕೂಲವಾಗ್ತದೋ ಅಂಥದ್ದನ್ನು ಉಪಯೋಗಿಸ್ಕೊಂಡ ಮೇಲೆ ಹಾಗಾದರೆ ಐ ವಿಲ್ ಟೇಕ್ ದ ಸೆಕೆಂಡ್ ಆಪ್ಷನ್. ಐ ವಿಲ್ ಟ್ರೈ ಟು ಕಮ್ಯುನಿಕೇಟ್ ಟು ಯು ಯೂಸಿಂಗ್ ವಾಟ್ ಎವರ್ ಲ್ಯಾಂಗ್ವೇಜ್ ಇಸ್ convenient at that point of time. Since I was told that you are all engineering students, I thought that I speak to you on how science sometimes motivates engineering students or engineering activities. Science motivating engineering activity. That is roughly the theme that I have. So how science motivates engineering? Can I have these slides off? That would be really a great help. Can you see this one clearly?
Yes, sir.
You can? Oh, very good. ಓಕೆ. ಸಾಧಾರಣವಾಗಿ ಸಿನಿಮಾ ಆರ್ಟಿಸ್ಟು ಮತ್ತು ಹಾಡು ಹೇಳೋ ಜನ ಇದನ್ನು ಈ ರೀತಿಯಾಗಿ ಉಪಯೋಗಿಸೋದುಂಟು. ನನಗೆ ಅದರ ಅಭ್ಯಾಸವಿಲ್ಲ, ಆದ್ದರಿಂದ ನೀವು ನನ್ನನ್ನು ಕ್ಷಮಿಸಬೇಕು ಮಧ್ಯ ಮಧ್ಯೆ. ಇವಾಗ ಸ್ಲೈಡ್ ಚೇಂಜ್ ಮಾಡುವಂತ ಯಾರನ್ನು ಕೇಳಬೇಕು ನಾನು? ನೀವು ಓಕೆ. ನೆಕ್ಸ್ಟ್ ನೋಡಿ, ಇದರೊಳಗೆ ಇನ್ ದಿಸ್ ಸ್ಲೈಡ್ ಐ ಆಮ್ ಶೋಯಿಂಗ್ ಯು ಸಮ್ ಸೈನ್ಸ್ ಆಕ್ಟಿವಿಟಿ. ವಾಟ್ ಈಸ್ ದಟ್ ಯು ಸಿ ಹಿಯರ್? Here is a big instrument in which you have only molten salts. And here is a piece of glass which has really been dipped into this one. What happens to that glass piece? Normally glass is something which is made out of, say, silicates. In fact, there is a notion that actually glass is sand and ash, which means you have silica, SiO2, and you add to that one sodium oxide in the form of sodium carbonate, which decomposes, and you have a sodium silicate. You can add any number of small quantities of various other oxides and you get a glass. And you see that one everywhere. And without glass, there is no life at all, isn't it? There is no light either. Because if you want to have a light bulb, you need glass. And to see through outside the window, you need a glass to that one. Of course, in India, of course, you can keep just an opening like that and something like iron bars. You may or may not need glass. And there were old houses in which you had only wooden windows so that you could pull it out. And in the night, you would close that one and you didn't have to see outside anyway in the dark. But it is not so in the West, because in many countries in the northern or higher latitudes, it becomes so cold that you cannot let air come in. You will have to, because it will be very cold. So you need to close that one so that you have glass, and only then you can possibly keep yourself warm. This necessitated the use of glass in those countries to a much greater extent than we do in India. Anyway, back to this one, therefore, if you have a glass piece, you must understand that it is made out of sodium silicate or an alkali silicate. Sometimes alumina added to that one so that it becomes sodium aluminosilicate, as we call it. This amount of chemistry, by any chance you have not been exposed to, take it from me and I will assume that you know it. So there is a sodium aluminosilicate piece which is the glass. It is transparent. Glass has this transparency because of a variety of reasons, and this is not the time that I can possibly speak about that. Simplest thing is, whenever you have a defect of some kind, something like a crack or a surface or whatever it is, whose dimension is about 1/4 of the wavelength of light or more, light is not scattered. And as a result of that one, inside a glass which has been frozen from a molten state, you don't have any defects of that kind. Therefore, the light simply passes. But that light, you should know, is what human eye perceives. Somewhere from 450 nanometers to about 750 nanometers, no more, no less. That's what it is. It's an absolutely narrow window. So God didn't give us ability to see either in the infrared or in the ultraviolet. There are animals which perceive that one in infrared to a certain extent. We don't do that one. We don't want to be animals anyway. So that's what it is. So a glass is transparent for the optical light because there are no defects by which it gets scattered. If you take such a piece of glass and put it in a molten salt, here in this case it is potassium nitrate, the following things happens. Namely, all the sodium ions which are present in the glass like this one will begin to go out, and all the potassium ion begins to get in. That's what happens. You will see at the surface of that one, therefore, when you dip in molten salt, you have the sodium ions going out and potassium ions coming in. Why does that happen? That's also a chemical principle. It is because it will have to have the free energy of this one constant at the interface. So in order to equilibrate this, in order to arrive at equilibrium, their chemical potentials get equated, or that is the attainment of the equilibrium. So when the potassium ion gets into the surface, they are larger ions. What does it do? It creates a surface stress now. It is compressive stress. Smaller ions have been taken out, larger ion has been pushed into its place, and as a result of that one, in the surface you have a stress created there. This is what is known as chemical strengthening. What is the effect of this one? If you were to take it out and say, try to scratch that one now, the scratch gets annealed by itself and it doesn't break so easily. And if you want to crush that one, you are crushing it against an already existing stress, and therefore it doesn't break. It becomes tough. So this process of dipping a glass sheet in a molten salt and making the surface ions substituted by the potassium and creating a surface stress is what we call as the chemical toughening of the glass. This can also be achieved by temperature effect. Simply heat that one and quench it. When you quench that one, in order to quench it, you blow air around it. So that also becomes a surface, a hardened one, or this is the toughening mechanism. Most of the glasses, toughened glass that we use, for example, if you go to market, they will tell you, this is the toughened glass, sir, you can buy this one. And you can see that when he will put that one on something and then he also beats on that one or jumps on that one, it doesn't break. The idea is this one. This is the way that it would have been surface stress which has been created that way. It becomes so hard that you can see that one. Compression is about 20% of that surface has been under compression, and about 60% of the interior is actually under tension. And such a glass, you can make the gorilla jump on that one and nothing happens. And at the same time, it is like gorilla, a strong glass. And this is the gorilla glass. Now, what is the importance of this one? The importance of this one can be seen in the next slide. That is where it became important. This idea of using chemistry in order to strengthen the glass was known in 1960s. And there was a file about this one in Carling Glasswork. On the right side and the left side, you see the present vase. This vase happens to be one of the two great minds, namely, this is the Wendell Weeks, which is the present president of Carling. On the right side is Steve Jobs, whose name is known to every young man because you have some or the other Apple device in your hands, an iPhone, an iPad, an iPod, or whatever you have, the I device. ತುಂಬಾ ಐಗಳದೊಳಗಲ್ವ ನಾನು ಅನ್ನೋ ಥರ ಐದು ಒಂಥರ ಅದು ಅಂಥವನೇ ಅಂಥ ಒಂದು ಹೆಚ್ಚಿನ ತನ್ನ ಬಗ್ಗೆ ಬೇಕಾದಷ್ಟು ಒಳ್ಳೆಯ ಅಭಿಪ್ರಾಯವನ್ನು ಇಟ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದಂಥ. He is no more. He passed away, unfortunately. That's what it is. Just in 2006, he came to speak to Wendell Weeks. And both of them were under 50. And these two great minds, you see what would happen. Why did Steve Jobs come to him? After all, this in the first place. In his study career, he was not one of those who got great degrees and came up. He was one of those self-made kind of an engineer. He was a go-getter. He would do things. He would understand and do things. That was the way Steve Jobs always did his work. That's what he was. Steve Jobs came there because he had discovered that he needed a tough glass to cover some of the iPhones that he was making. One of the things, whenever there is a success, you will have many stories. I was talking about the same thing while we were coming in the car this morning, just half an hour ago. Namely, it is also said that Steve Jobs, once he entered into the car searching for his car keys, he found that he pulled out his phone and found already scratches which have been made on that one by the key bunch that he had kept inside. So he thought that it is essential that in future he makes the covers of these phones free from the scratches. How to get something which doesn't get scratched? Number one, these covers are often, it used to be at least made out of polymers, and even today there are, where they use polymers. Polymers are good because they can, whenever you move your finger on that one, it can bend a little, create a capacitance in between, and they are the devices, they are the electronics, operating elements in the electronics which enable signal to be passed on. You need a glass which would do the same thing. So it has to be bendable, it has to be tough, it should resist the scratch. So he went to Wendell Weeks asking him, can you make a glass for me which is like this? So Wendell Weeks is good. He said that let me try. He called his staff and tried to find out where are all the glasses that we have made. He discovered in 1960s they had made a glass known as Chemcore glasses. They tried to sell that one for Ford company as windshield glasses, which they couldn't because there wasn't much of money returning to their company. So they abandoned that one and kept the files anywhere because they had a composition of the glass which could be made. Now was an opportunity. Here was an engineering challenge for them to make a thin glass which could be in a similar way treated. You had the composition, and all that you needed was to make it a thinner one and do the same chemical coupling. In the next one, you can see what they have been able to achieve. There was a glass which was very thin, which they made by a special technology, and it was shown to be actually much stronger than what you have in the sapphire or the same thing. It was stronger than sapphire. You can see this one. Whenever it broke, it would indicate at what pressure. 233 pounds compared to 161 pounds pressure on a sapphire which gave way. And similarly in the previous one you could see that today, but go back, go to the next one. Yes, that's correct. But today these glasses are made by a special technology, and that technology is engineered. It was not made by the scientists who discovered the composition of the glass, but it was done by the engineers who could make that thin glass. That's where the engineering really comes in. No scientist can possibly do that. It doesn't mean that there is such a great distinction between a wall that distinguishes scientists from engineers. They have to understand the science to do whatever engineering they could possibly imagine and do. Here is the way to get a very thin glass. What is it that they have done? They have this kind of you can see this one, in cross section, this is how it looks. This is the container for molten glass. You melt more glass than what it can hold or put molten glass into this one. It overflows. A very thin layer of that molten glass simply slides along the surface of that one from both sides, combine here, and it can be simply pulled down. You hold it with a clip, pull it down, and you get an absolutely thin glass, less than a millimeter in thickness, and 0.25 millimeters to be very precise right now. That's what it is. 0.2 to 0.25 millimeter, the thickness glass. Imagine that's actually putting 4 human hairs together. That's what the kind of thinness of the glass would be. And that glass is taken out, and as I showed you in the other one, namely in a molten salt it is dipped and it is stuffed. There you have good engineering application. Could I have the next slide? You have another glass which has come up like this. We knew in physics that you can have, say for example, a very thin glass tube of this kind. If it is here it is a fiber, or otherwise it can simply a glass tube kind of thing, or a glass which is made instead of a tube, it's a glass, let's say a rod. In a glass rod, if you were to take and let light go in, at certain angles it is totally internally reflected. The total internal reflection can be seen in another amorphous material. Say for example, a laser beam in a perspex passes through like that laser light. It's completely internally reflected. This can be assisted by having a cladding under. If the cladding has a lower index of refraction, then the light is going to bend towards that medium which has a higher refractive index, and you have the total internal reflection. What is the use of this one? If you have a light source on this side and let in a beam of light, that beam of light can go on and on and on and on. You can take that one several kilometers. In pure silica glass, for example, you can take it about 30-40 kilometers without much loss before you can say that the intensity of light has really come down. That means what? You can have, if you associate with that light, some signal which you can catch later. What do you mean by that one? Well, you can have a beam of light, you have a wavelength of light, which can be modified by another superimposed frequency on that one. That means a light is going like that, a superimposed frequency can be something else which modulates that one. You can demodulate it at the other end and get back the information that you have loaded on this one. Let's put it this way. Modulation and demodulation is the technique that is used in order to get the information away from an optical signal of this kind. If you can do that one, therefore, it is possible to pass light like this. There are many ways that you can see how light really through internal, only total internal reflection can be made to pass through a thin fiber, a glass fiber of this kind. That is only to prove in the laboratory that you can do it. That you can take it for communication. In order to take communications out of this one or establish a communication channel out of making use of this fiber can be seen in the next one. That needed many other things. Number one, a light source of one single sort of a regular controllable frequency set, one particular frequency. You will have to pass it through this fiber where it does not absorb. First of all, this fiber should itself not attenuate this. Attenuation, that's what it is, quote unquote. That is the single parameter which decides the usefulness of the fiber. Compared to silica fiber, if I may say within parentheses, if I add, a fiber which is made out of a fluoride glass is at least 1,000 times more transparent than this one. But unfortunately, a fluoride glass fiber cannot be drawn in for great lengths in order to be wound around anything at all. That is where there has been a failure of the fluoride glasses. Otherwise, you could go 1,000 times means what? You can go 4,000 kilometers without much loss at all of the signal intensity. But that is anyway a gone case. But in these cases, you can see that we can recognize at least about 3-4 regions where the frequency, the window that is available, namely very low loss can occur in these things. And actually, we were first using this particular region. Later on, as you can see, 3-4 regions of as we call them as optical windows, are available for transmission of light through silica fibers. The attenuation occurs because of a number of mechanisms. The first person to show that indeed it happens because of at least 3 main mechanisms to Skov was given the Nobel Prize. And in fact, these losses are, these particular sources of loss are primarily inherent absorption, inherent scattering. Third one is, of course, the presence of impurities. They can be controlled. And today, you have a glass fiber made out of pure silica by very special methods in which you don't have any proton at all which is present as OH. And in those cases, it can be as low as 0.2 to 0.25 decibels per kilometer. That's what it is. Easily you can go up to 40 kilometers without significant loss. But if at 40 kilometers, what do you do? If you want to communicate from here to say Ramanagaram, it is okay. But if you want to go beyond and go to Mysore, the signal can it be carried there means no. You will have to catch that one, amplify it again and go. How do you do this one? This amplification is done at certain amplification places. Those are the places to which you go. You see that it is amplified again and go. These are the repeater, sort of repeater units that you have where you take the same frequency, amplify it again and send from that point to the next point. It used to be about 40 kilometers. In the next one, you see that this could be avoided by yet another discovery which was made by Professor David Payne. He did the following things. After all, the frequency is coming into this one. Unfortunately, I have to use certain expressions and, I will have to assume that some of this would be known to you, or to go into, say, for example, wavelength division multiplexing, an idea in WDM. To describe this one, probably 1 or 2 hours of your teacher's time would be taken away during your courses itself. But just assume that it is possible to do it this way. Supposing a signal which has weakened has come here. It has to be amplified. What do you do for that one? The same frequency should be added to that one because it's simply by superposition you add on. How do you add exactly in phase a frequency, a certain amount of light to the same one? How do you do that? Well, it is done by a simple technique. What you do is, you have a piece of fiber which has been doped with erbium. And this erbium has the same frequency where it is going to give out light. See, erbium is one of the rare metals, rare earths, in which you can excite that one with any frequency. It relaxes to an intermediate level from where it can be made to emit the same frequency which you have used to carry. Carrier frequency and this emission frequency are the same. So you keep waiting, having in the laser, what is laser? It is light amplification by stimulated emission of radiation, right? That's what laser means. So stimulation can be done when you have this level. It's all waiting there. Everybody coming here and standing here. If that is the jump that you will have to make, you keep waiting. And somebody is going to be pushed a little. Everybody, daba, you are going to jump over. And that is the way it would happen in this case. This is what is known as the inversion. So when there is a concentration of electrons which has been excited to this level, if something of this kind of a frequency were to come, it is like keeping that one and all the frequencies getting suddenly generated. This is the laser amplification. What is the frequency that is generated? It is the same as the frequency that was used in order to stimulate it. So you have in phase frequency which has been added to this one, and you have an amplified signal which is coming up. This was a very brilliant piece of work, as a matter of fact. He should have been given a Nobel Prize in any other condition, but that was a period in which there were so many other beautiful discoveries, so he wouldn't get the Nobel Prize for that one. But he is a highly respected professor for this discovery. In fact, this erbium, using a piece of glass which has been doped with erbium, was also achieved in India in the Central Glass and Ceramic Research Institute by scientists in India also. And today it's a common thing, particularly when there is a fiber optic communication. Could I have the next slide? So back to that one in the previous slide, we learned that in order to be able to use these fibers through which you can have optical frequencies transmitted to be used in the field, in order to be convert that one for optical communication has been the job of engineers. They have been able to do that one. I mean, you can imagine that on those cables which come there, everywhere in Bangalore you would have your traffic completely disturbed because of that one. Digging and putting those very, those tubes with various colors going out. And through them are all the optical cables which they are taking it up. And that is, you can see how that engineering has made today's communication so easy. And for you people, you may not understand it. There are a couple of people here, of course, not much younger than me is Ghanshyam, who was in National College long ago as a student friend of ours. And he can imagine that in our days, these things were not there. We have lived through all these shocks of modern science. And today you have a communication where everybody carries a device like this. And it is in use for wrong reasons all the time, because students use this one during exams, students use this classrooms, students use it elsewhere. And of course, it's also a criminal activity today. But this change has come about for which you are so used to, but to us, it was one of those shocks which was added, including television. In 1984, when Mrs. Gandhi was assassinated, we saw that one, that was the time color television had just got introduced. And you would see that one in rare places, one or two places where you had this one. That itself was a shock. We had shock of the radio itself when we were very young. And that is the way that you can imagine what it could be. So that is a great engineering step. Today you hear of another big thing that is coming about, and that is in nanomaterials. In that nanomaterials, here is a two-dimensional nanomaterial known as graphene. Who doesn't know that graphene is an integral part, that is carbon that is present very widely in practically every carbon material, including charcoal and of course coal and of course graphite by definition, and of course in every other thing which is made out of carbon. This graphene is actually a sheet, a thin sheet, as thin as it could ever be, and as thin as the materials that we ever know in two dimensions in the entire universe. We don't know of any other thing which is present as a planar sheet of this thinness. And this one atom thick layer of carbon, which is bonded to each other as if it is present in an hexagon by a bonding which we know today by virtue of our knowledge of chemistry and physics, that it is through sp2 hybridization, is a new discovery in the sense that we have been able to isolate them. These two people, Graham and Novosilo, got their Nobel Prize for isolating this one and studying its electrical properties. And there is a story that always amazes me, and I have never really come out of that shock. If you looked at what they have done, they have only been able to pull out a sheet of carbon from graphene. What did they do? They took a piece of graphite. What did they do next? They took a piece of scotch tape. They put it on the top of that one and lifted it off. Putting a scotch tape and lifting it off to pull out a layer has been known in chemistry for a very long time. Because who doesn't know other materials like mica, in which you can peel it off by putting a scotch tape? It was known. You knew that carbon is made of, graphite is made up of graphene, which is like this one in bonding. Therefore, we knew that there are hexagonal layers of this one. We also knew that its conductivity must be highly asymmetric. It must be one thing in the plane, one thing in particular to that one. All these things have been known. But this pulling out was done by these two people who made a device out of that one and got Nobel Prize. There were others who were trying, including my own teacher, now Professor C.N.R. Rao, who is the Bharat Ratna, who did a lot of research in this area. He has been able to separate that one by chemical means. He had done lots of very beautiful experiments in this one. No, there were others also in the world who had done such marvelous experiments. So, you need a little bit of luck. We have seen in a movie known My Fair Lady. There is a character who says a little bit of luck. You can go anywhere if you have a little bit of luck, including getting the Nobel Prize. But anyway, the most important thing is you can peel out a layer of that one, and that happens to be the graphene. This graphene has properties which are extraordinary. In fact, there are many methods by which you can get that one. You can today do that one by chemical vapor deposition. You can separate that one by chemical methods like oxidizing first and make them oxidized at layers layers separate themselves out. You can boil that one immediately, you can pull that one also. You can have it really deposited or taken out on metallic surfaces. You can do that. It is extremely strong. Graphene makes 500 times stronger composites by just addition of 0.404% of that. You have a polymer into which you put this one. Polymer becomes so tough, so strong. That's what it is. Important property because graphene itself is like that. Even if you put pieces of different pieces of graphene, stitch them together, they stitch themselves. You don't have to do anything. Because there is an unsatiated bond. They bond themselves wherever it is free. It is at 1.5 gigapascals, copper graphene is about 50% stronger than titanium. And this strong graphene by itself is extremely strong, which is given it, in the next one. Graphene, where is that one? Reportedly more than, no, that's not what I, there is a graphene toughness. Oh, I have not given that one myself. I'm sorry for that. But itself is an extremely tough material. It is the toughest known to mankind today. That's what it is. Graphene also conducts the electricity 100 times faster than silicon in computer chips. So there goes. To use these properties, to determine that one in the laboratory is the job of chemists and physicists. To be able to use that one outside, to bring it for some kind of a logical conclusion, it is the work of the engineer. This has motivated engineers to make a large number of devices of this kind. Here you can see, this is a light emitting diode, or the organic light emitting diodes, which has been, we have light emitting layers or lead. That's what has been put there. And you have the graphene layers to conduct the whole thing. And you have a device which comes out of this kind of a thing, an arrangement, which is not easy as it has been put here as if it is a cartoon of some kind. And you can do that when such devices can be built, which takes you into a different area altogether in terms of application. You can see the potential graphene applications include touch screens, which you see everywhere. I mean, who would imagine one day you would just touch that one, push it. My grandchild does it with great facility, and I am amazed how it would learn. That is how it would happen. It is, you are into a culture which is very different now. For you, a switch means you put your finger and push it up and take it anywhere you want it and do it. Oh my God. And that kind of a thing, touch screen, solar cells, most importantly, energy storage devices, cell phones, and eventually high-speed computer chips. That's what would be made out of them. As you can see here, the sheet resistance ranges continuously, and when you really come to solar cells, you need a sheet resistance which is, for a touch screen it will be anywhere up to 500, and in the case of solar cell it can be just 1 ohm per square, where means the sheet resistance is actually R by T. That happens to be the resistance by thickness. So that's what it would be for the particular area. And we express that one as per square, and that is the unit for any two-dimensional device. And so, these devices requiring various sheet resistances can be simply manipulated by having graphene with different thicknesses. 1 layer, 2 layer, 3 layers, and things like that would do the job for us. As you can see, in under this 2004, Nobel Prize was given in which year? Previous year, 2004 was the day? 2007 wasn't it? No, please, previous one. 2004 scientists answer again, 2004. This is in under a decade. In under a decade, what is the previous one? No. Next one. 10,000 patents have been filed on graphene. Future markets estimates in 2008, 28 tons of graphene was produced and is projected to grow to 573 tons by 2017. 570 tons of that one, a single layer. You can imagine what it would be. It would probably, sort of surround this entire globe several times. That's what it would be. The area would be. Of course, it could all be used in various devices in order to make them like these touch screens that you are seeing today. Could I have the next one? I'll take you another important problem where engineers will play a big role. I've taken it in electronics. I've took it to 2 examples in classes, for example. These are just small, isolated examples, literally hundreds of examples where engineers have made a success out of this. But there is a big demand for engineers in something else, another big area. You can see that when global oil resources are dipping low now. You don't have oil for next, after another 25, 30 years or so. You don't have any oil to run our vehicles. Became, of course, these 25 kilometers, 20 kilometers or so right now. And you will be finding that it is so expensive. Indeed, it is expensive. We don't understand that. Supposing you were to use the energy that is available as solar energy, probably at the end of that one I will mention it. Current world oil reserves are just about 160 billion tons. We use every year 4 billion tons of this oil. That means in another 40 years, we could all be exhausted. No oil well has been discovered, pure oil well has been discovered for the last 30 years. You must imagine that one. Wherever you have made a hole, you have got a lot of gas. You haven't got really petroleum. That's what it is. World situation is like this. For whatever reason, nobody has given a good explanation of that one. Major oil actually comes from this one. You can see that when it is something like 70% or whatever it is. Only from, this Middle East, these are the countries which are doing that. All of them, Iraq, Kuwait, Iran, UAE, Qatar, Oman, Syria, and others, all of them, several of the OPEC members as well. They all come from here. The largest proportion of oil comes from there. Global resources may therefore just get exhausted. India, for example, imports 142 million tons of crude oil, somewhere around 150 million tons of crude oil. ಇಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಇರೋ ಶುಗರ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಮಾರೋದು, ಆ ಬರೋ ಡಾಲರ್ಸ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ನಾವು ಹೋಗಿ ಆಯಿಲ್ ಕೊಂಡ್ಕೊಂಡು ಬಂದು ಅದನ್ನೆಲ್ಲ ಹಾಕಿ ಸುಟ್ಟು ಎಲ್ಲ ನಮ್ಮ ದೇಶ ಬರಡಾಗೋದು ಯಾತಕ್ಕೆ ಅಂದರೆ ಇದರಿಂದ. ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ನಮ್ಮ ಹತ್ರ ಇಲ್ದಲೇ ಇರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥ ವಿಚಾರ ಅದು. ವೇರ್ ಈಸ್ ಅವರ್ ಫಾರಿನ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಚೇಂಜ್ ರಿಯಲಿ ಗೋಯಿಂಗ್ in order to buy the oil? As young people, you will have to give a thought to this. Are we doing the right thing? When one big car carries one person in that one, nobody else. You can imagine how much of a loss it is right now for the kind of luxury that we can ill afford. That's what it is. Could I have the next slide? In the next slide, supposing that is all gone, there is no other burnable carbon with us. No, there is a lot of global shale gas resources. Shale means shale is a natural gas that is found trapped in shale formations. Shale itself is a fine-grained, clastic, sedimentary rock that is present everywhere. You can see that there is a lot of shale in India as well. Now, how do you get that one? That getting that one is the most important thing. You can see that one in the next. Notice, this is something of Daitya technology. That's all what I can say about this. This is an engineering discovery, all right, for which you may not be proud in another 25 years. Do you know why? They discovered that you can dig a well like this and turn it around to go in the horizontal direction. You all knew that when you go down and bore a well, you go vertically down. At best you can make it at an angle. In fact, in Kuwait, when the Iraq war was going on, Saddam Hussein's complaint was at the border they are actually having from the Kuwait, at an angle they are boring and taking away the oil from Iraq. That was his complaint. But that was again a linear hole that they were putting through the earth. That is what his complaint was. No, now you can make this one turn around at arbitrarily smaller angles and go like that. Bore one well, turn it around, turn it around, turn it around, turn it around. Why do you want to turn it around? Well, if you have oil or gas straight away available, take it. No, that's not the idea. The idea is to go like that one, put explosives inside, explode them so that this shale, as I mentioned, the sedimentary rocks, which contain a lot of methane, is simply broken down and you have released the gas. This released gas is an enormous quantity of methane which is available for burning, ready gas that is available for you. Oil prices, rather demand on oil, fell in United States instantly once the fracking was invented. And fracking is now the order of the day in the United States and in various other countries. Using explosives followed by injection of millions of gallons of water, sand and chemicals to break up the rock miles below. That's what you do. And of course you are supposed to go well below the aquifer level so that water doesn't get polluted. But now it is found wherever you have the fracking going on, water is polluted with hydrocarbons, Large number of chemicals that you have used along with the explosives also have come out, and you have problems of that kind. Could I have the next slide? But you need gas, but there is a problem here right now. You use that one all right, because you need that one for a number of purposes. If you looked at the sky today, at any moment you have 5,000 flights crisscrossing all over the world. MH7, which is in Malaysia, the most recent happening. You have just 90 seconds away was the flight which was bringing Indian Prime Minister on the same route. That's what it is. 5,000 flights at any moment. Scientists also travel a lot. TISA had put it for scientists in the conference, but that is just remaining over that one. Scientists who talk so much about carbon and pollution and all this also travel a lot. There are a number of people who are contributing to that one. Because at any moment in Indian Institute of Science, 50% of the professors are airbound. There's bound there. We say that where we so means he is 30,000 feet above sea level. That's all what we know about it. Because he may be traveling somewhere. That's the way it is. Could I have the next one? We need electricity. We produce electricity by using carbonaceous sources only. You can see the night sky of the world which has been combined here. You can see that in India, a lot of light. In the Africa and probably some parts of Mongolia and also of Russia, which is not lighted. But otherwise you have so much of light. Do you know how much you use for that one? It is a 10 billion units every day only for lighting. That is the amount of electricity that is needed in the world today. Could I have the next slide? And for all this, to produce this electricity, you are using carbon sources. You are primarily burning either carbon or hydrocarbons in order to produce this electricity. What are you doing by that one? Very simple elementary chemistry, you are making carbon dioxide emission. Why is carbon dioxide emission bad for us? Well, carbon dioxide concentration in the atmosphere, if it was 250 parts per million, it's a small concentration all right, was good enough for the earth as a blanket. It would keep us warm. It kept Europe 14 degrees higher, warmer than what it would be without carbon dioxide. And therefore we are all comfortable. Today it has crossed, in the next one as I show, it has crossed in the year 2013, just about a year ago, on May 9th of 2013, it crossed 400 parts per million. What is this 400 parts per million? You don't have to, you don't have to wait for an answer for that one, because if it comes to about 400 to 450, the temperature of the globe can rise by about 2 degrees. 2 degrees centigrade rise on an average is a disaster. Do you know why? You can say that, well, 2 degrees, what is there? There was a joke about the previous president of the United States. He was holding a globe. I don't see any warmth in that one. The global warming, everybody was laughing. There was a cartoon like that. 2 degrees is an enormous amount of rise. Because the entire life which is present there, for example, in the sea, plankton can simply die, and you have a problem with the life in the seas. You can, any number of other things can happen. There can be diseases, and more than anything else, the direct result of that one is the melting down of all the glaciers that you have. Immediately for us, the thing would be that the Himalayan glaciers would simply melt away. Himalayan glaciers are responsible for keeping the northern Indian rivers like Ganges, Yamuna, Indus, and every one of them, and the other 3 rivers that flow eastwards like Mekong and the other rivers which flow into China, which keep lives there. 60% of the population in India is dependent on the rivers in the north which come from the top of the Himalayas. Himalayan glaciers are protecting us. 2 degrees rise, Himalayan glaciers will completely melt down. Come summer, you can walk through the Ganges. Come summer, you can cross, you don't have to wait for the Yamuna to open up for a boat. You can simply come, you don't have to go upon the bridge, you can come along, walk along, the kind of thing. Where will be the drinking water at that time? How will you support the agriculture? Right now, even in United States, there is a problem. Because of the increase in temperature, the the snowpack that has been there on the western mountain ranges that they have has already melted down, and you have problem of drinking water in California. It is not an easy problem to solve for them also. The previous Science Secretary to the President, of the United States, Obama, warned them against this one. There won't be agriculture in the United States if this were to happen in a few years, if the global warming were to be left unattended. That is what is happening, and people will have to be worried about that one. Okay, this has all happened. What do you do? Where does the engineers come from? I mentioned about this 2-degree choice. If it crosses this 400 to 450 parts per million, is guaranteed by every model that one thinks of, that the temperature of the globe would increase by about 2 degrees. That is why this 2-degree fear. After a while, we are talking about carbon, and percentages of that one, or parts per million of that one. Now we talk about 2-degree rise. 2-degree rise means it is 450 parts per million. That's what it would mean in terms of the concentration of the carbon dioxide. Any number of things, you can't read that one from there because I myself can't read it here. Adaptation becomes extremely questionable if it is about 2.3 degrees and above. 2 degrees itself will cause an enormous number of problems in the world. There's 5 times as much carbon this is about the carbon that is available for us to burn, but we can't afford to burn them. If you can't afford to burn them, you have no electricity. If you don't have electricity, no flights, nothing, all of these things will have to stop. How are you going to do that? See, the problem is something that you should carry home in your mind is that this earth has been, for whatever reason, so if somebody had designed that one, is designed to carry about 2.5 billion people. Today we are more than 7 billion people. If you really looked at how much of the surface of earth do you need, or that kind of a surface you need another 2.5 earths for the people on this earth to be supported. Where you will find that one? You can't increase the surface area. If that were possible, probably would have done that one. You can do probably now. Make the whole earth porous. Take it out, put it on the surface. You can't do that one. Because you have a crust of only about 150 to 200 kilometers. And below that one, there is no way that we can survive. It is so hard. So on the crust, all these things are taking place. The history of Earth is such that it has cooled to have some oceans, 75% covered by oceans, and 25% roughly. That is what we see as a livable Earth. Out of which also in some 13.5 billion hectares, you can use only 8.5 billion hectares of Earth's surface for agriculture and for living. And we simply cannot afford to lose any part of this one. That's where it is. In the next slide, I show how to control this one. Now, I'm making it brief because this itself is a very huge story. That's not what my purpose is. What are the options that we have? The options that we have are very clear. Either stop burning coal altogether. What do you do for that? Well, the other possibility is use hydrogen. Instead of carbon and hydrogen, you use only hydrogen. Next question will be, where will you find hydrogen? Among all the elements, hydrogen is the most available, but all in combined conditions. There is no free hydrogen that is available. Nam polar hatra hagiri, in gold sigalla, hydrogen sigate andre, it would have been possible. There is no such mechanism you can get. Hydrogen is in nascent state. Then hydrogen will have to be made. That is expensive. There is no way that you can do it. What are the other possibilities? If you don't do that one, go to nuclear energy. That is another possibility, because there is no carbon involved in it. There is a third option, and that is, after all, you burn carbon in order to make carbon dioxide. Can you, in some way, take the carbon which has been taken up by the plants, because carbon dioxide has been taken by photosynthesis, and you take that carbon and use it, no other thing. That means if you can get something out of the available bio wealth, convert that one into a burnable something and use it. And that is where most of the biological approaches have been there. You use a stitch grass, convert that one into alcohol and do that. Everywhere, alcohol. You can make that alcohol. I hope, like in Brazil, you have you use their alcohol along with other fuels that you burn. You have E10, E75. That means ethanol is 75%. Rest of it is petroleum. E100 vehicles are in that one. Of course, our diesel engines, you can use it with alcohol. It will still burn. No problem about that one. But the engine may go bad. It has not been designed fully to burn only alcohols. That is what it is. But to convert them is not easy. That is a technology by itself. It's not so easy to convert as everybody, everybody who has a small success, tomorrow will come out into newspaper and say, oh, we have made all this one. ಇದು ನಾವು ಚಿಕ್ಕವರಾಗಿದ್ದಾಗ ನಮ್ಮ ಮೇಷ್ಟ್ರು ಹೇಳ್ತಿದ್ರು ಒಂದು, ನಮ್ಮ ಹಿತ್ತಲಲ್ಲಿ ಒಂದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪ ಕೊತ್ತಂಬರಿ ಸೊಪ್ಪು ಹಾಕ್ಬಿಟ್ಟು, ಓ ವಿ ಹ್ಯಾವ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟೆಡ್ ಎಕ್ಸ್ಪೋರ್ಟಿಂಗ್ ಕೊತ್ತಂಬರಿ ಸೊಪ್ಪು ಟು ಯುನೈಟೆಡ್ ಸ್ಟೇಟ್ಸ್ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಬರ್ತಿರೋದು ಎರಡು ಕೊತ್ತಂಬರಿ ಸೊಪ್ಪು ಇಲ್ಲಿ ಬೆಳೆದಿರೋದು. ಆ ಥರ ನಾವು ಎಲ್ಲೋ ಒಂದು ಸ್ವಲ್ಪದನ್ನ ಯಾವುದೋ ಕನ್ವರ್ಟ್ ಮಾಡಿಬಿಟ್ಟು we say that we can make alcohol out of this one and we can supply the whole world with this one. With that kind of a thing which you saw there, 145 billion tons of that one which we import every year, I want to stop this one even without enough. See, that's the way it is. So you can't do this one. So today the other possibility will be use nuclear energy. The third option would be, as I mentioned. The fourth option would be, all right, you continue to use this one, make sure that the carbon dioxide that is produced is simply taken away from the atmosphere. Don't add it to atmosphere. And somehow take it out and store that, sequester that. This is what is known as carbon sequestration. Carbon capture and sequestration technology is what is known as CCS technology. What are the things that are available? That appears to be beautiful, all right. ಏನೋ ಕೆಟ್ಟದು ಒಂದೇನೋ ನನಗೆ ಇದಿದೆ, ದಿನ ಒಂದೊಂದು ಮಾತ್ರ ನಮಗೂ ಹಾಕೋ ಇಗೋ ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜ್ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು. That's the way that it is, isn't it? Doctor, diabetics, what do they do? You keep on gulping a tablet and don't stop eating, right? You will have to eat. You need to make your life. Like that one, can you capture the carbon and do that one? Chemists have come out with some materials like this olivine, and they can simply, like for example,